All right. So we definitely wanted to record today's session because we will be wanting to share that out widely with folks so they can hear all of this great panel discussion. So that we will have it recorded, as well as we will provide the slideshow it'll be posted. I'm sure we'll post it on our site, but we'll also send it out to folks. We will ask that everyone keep their microphone muted unless you are a panelist and you are talking. There are a lot of folks here this morning, and we have a lot of questions and answers to go through with our panelists. But we do want to get input from you all as the panel discussion is progressing. So we're asking that you direct those questions into the chat. So if you have follow-up questions or other questions for the panelists, please make sure to put that information into the chat. We will be monitoring chat. Aaron, Stewart, and myself, mostly Aaron and Stewart, will be monitoring the chat, and we'll be bringing questions forward as time allows. Also, too, we're aware of what questions might be coming up, so we might know that those things are being answered down the road. For questions that we don't get to, questions and answers, or questions that are posed that the panelists don't get to today, don't fret, we're going to have follow-up sessions. Our plan is to host some more deeper dive sessions on some topics. We know that there's some information that folks will want to know more about. And so we plan to host future sessions, and there'll be opportunity as well during today's presentation to provide some input from everyone who's here on this call, session today, on the kinds of things you'd like to see some deeper dive sessions planned around. So stay tuned for that. But again, please do direct any questions you have into the chat, and that'll be monitored. So I'd like to take this time to introduce our panelists. We have panelists here from Fresno County, Maria Rodriguez and Michael Reiser here representing Fresno. We have 3 panelists here from Los Angeles County, David Hogan, sorry if I said that wrong, Juan Carlos Martinez and Maritza Gomez are here from LA County. Humboldt County, we have Leora Levenbach and Danielle Sherwood who are going to speak about their experience with HomeSafe Pilot. Shannon Lemons is here from Placer County, and from Riverside County, we have Barry Dewey and Grace Felicia. So I want to say, first and foremost, thank you so much to our panelists who are here this morning, who have prepared information to share with all of you, and hopefully it will be a great opportunity to learn from our pilot counties on some of the lessons learned through HomeSafe. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started. So we have a number of questions to go through this morning. We will be building in a break, so we'll get to a point about halfway through our questions where we will build in a break time so folks can check an email or use the facility. So, but I'll go ahead and dive right into the questions. So first and foremost, our first question is, and this question is for all of our counties, but I'm going to start with Shannon and Placer. What type of model is your county using to administer HomeSafe?
Thank you. I appreciate that. Shannon Lemons, we are using a dedicated model with a contractor. And so due to our size of our county, we decided to implant APS contractor within our unit. So we hired a housing coordinator and we placed them side by side with myself as a designated HomeSafe staff. So we kind of did a hybrid model. It had a lot of benefits for us. For one, it allowed us to have quick access to money. We had a same-day check turnaround, and we didn't have to go through the long process of getting vendors accepted by the county. When people are needing income to stop these evictions, we need the income pretty immediately. We can't wait 10 days for that turnaround. So that was a really big benefit to us. Another thing we had done is when we got our first allocation, they announced it in the newspaper. And so we had the floodgates open wide. So we had a very big push when they first came in for all of our kind of cases due to it being on the front page. So what we did is we had to actually switch a little bit midway zone and involve some of our other caseworkers to do some of the tasks such as getting the Medi-Cal paperwork in place. And so we started to do more of a hybrid model just because the caseload was so high. So we started out with just myself and a contracted housing coordinator, and then later we switched up to a case manager recognizing that. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Shannon. How about Fresno? What type of model is your county using?
This is Michael. So we use actually a contracted vendor. We already had existing contract for a homeless HDAC program and some of our other housing assistance program. So we just expanded on that existing contract and added them to provide the housing assistance for APS clients.
Great, thanks. Los Angeles.
Yes, good morning. This is Dave Cochin, and just want to thank you for the opportunity to share our home safe experiences with everybody. So we also have a hybrid model with dedicated staff within our department, as well as contracted workers. We contract with our LA Homeless Services Authority, and so our social workers can complete an APS home safe referral for services if the client is homeless or at risk of becoming homeless. We have one full-time position within our department to review the referrals for completeness and appropriateness. And then what we do is send it over to the service provider, which is the Homeless Services Authority. They in turn subcontract with 8 service providers throughout the county to provide the services depending on the, the area of the county where the homeless or at risk of homeless individual is located. And then the service provider makes an assessment, provides prevention services according to the housing needs. And then once the stability of the client has been achieved, the client is then exited and can be connected to other prevention programs such as shallow subsidy.
Great. Thanks for that, David. How about Humboldt? What type of model are you using?
Hi, this is Danielle, and we are using an integrated model. Our county is a pretty rural county. It's very spread out. You could drive, more than 4 hours going from one section of the county to the other. So to have a dedicated social worker just doesn't make sense for us. So all of our social workers can assess for home safe eligibility and make recommendations. And we also have staff like social service aides and vocational assistants who help with some of the stuff like the follow-up contacts and like the assessments and things like that.
Thanks for that, Danielle. And lastly, how about Riverside?
Hi, good morning. My name is Grace Beluccio, and we are a dedicated model. We have a specific team that works the whole county in different areas, and we divide it by zip codes. We are doing from start to finish. We complete the investigations through an APS case, and we keep the cases as long as needed, and we're completing case management, and also once they're housed, independent living services.
Great. Thanks for sharing all the different models that folks have. Moving on, our next question is about how staffing has been planned and structured for your home safe program. So I'm going to start with David in Los Angeles to answer this question.
Certainly. So essentially, we have APS social workers that close the investigation if the investigation of alleged abuse has been completed, while the home safe service providers continue working on the housing stability component. So in addition to screening and coordinating referrals, APS home safe staff participate in case conferencing and assist in connecting APS social workers with service providers. So essentially, it's basically two separate functions that our social workers and the contracted home safe workers have going on, parallel with each other, but they do work together as needed. So we did discover that there was a need to train our own APS social workers on the definitions of homeless and at risk of homelessness, just to make sure that, they understood when they're working together with the service providers, in case additional training was needed.
Great, thanks for that information. Humboldt.
Hi, so when we applied for the program originally, we were hoping to hire an additional social worker with our funding, but that wasn't possible with the last round. So we just decided to spread what funds we got out more towards direct services. So this time around, the funding has increased, so we are thinking about hiring an additional social worker, not just for Home Safe, but because of the APS expansion that's happening and lowering the age of an elder to 60. We really feel like it's necessary at this time. Our caseloads are super high right now.
Yeah, I would imagine a lot of the counties are experiencing that. Thank you for sharing that, Danielle. Fresno, did you have something to add with how staffing was planned and structured for your Home Safe program?
Ours actually is structured similar to LA. So we went with, again, as I said, an outside vendor. We realized it would probably take too long to hire somebody and then train them, or take an experienced staff and train them in housing because of staffing issues already, and again, back to high caseloads. So we already used the existing infrastructure and just expanded on that. There was some education involved for our APS staff in terms of, this is their role, this is your role, and we had to reemphasize that a few times throughout the project, but we found it to be successful this way.
Great. Okay, moving on to the next question. Riverside's going to take this question first. Could you share with us what were the top challenges that your county faced during the Home Safe pilot, and how did you work to address them? If you're talking, Barry, sorry, Barry, you're on mute. Sorry.
Sorry about that. Sorry.
No worries.
Hi, everybody. So the biggest challenge that we faced was really convincing the broader APS agency that we needed to work on homeless cases if they were a dependent adult or an elder or at risk of homelessness. Making that transition for APS workers, that those were our legitimate clients, was kind of a tough sell for us at the time. And we had to do that all the way from the clerical staff through upper administration. So what we did is we went around and completed kind of an informational campaign to our staff, talking about how these are our clients and why these are our clients, and that nobody else is really serving them, and that's what APS is for this niche of folks in the world. We also went to almost every single homeless provider meeting that was occurring across the county to learn, because we had a lot to learn, and also to make our presence known and to begin to establish all those necessary partnerships that we would need. So that was really the top challenge. Once we were able to get across that, other things started to fall into place. But convincing our agency that this is something that we needed to do was tough.
Thanks for sharing that, Barry. Other counties, how about LA? Can you share with us some of the top challenges your county faced?
Sure. One of the biggest ones we had was simply the lack of affordable housing available throughout LA County. We have clients who've been living in the same location for many years, and suddenly they find themselves, facing rent realities, with the new market rate. And then in addition to that, many older adults just simply weren't willing to leave their community because just because of the having adapted to the area that they live in and establishing a long history with a support system, moving into a new area, for them, it could lead to isolation. And then also the idea of participating in shared housing, even if that housing, that's the only one that they could afford due to a fixed income. So to deal with a number of these issues, what we would do is at least to deal with it on a temporary basis, we would set them up in a temporary housing situation, at least until we could determine how to resolve the immediate issues. Juan Carlos, Moritz, I don't know if you have anything to add to that. If you do, please chime in.
Okay. All right. Placer, could you talk a little bit about the challenges your county faced?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I didn't know anything about the homeless world as an APS social worker when we first started. So I think one of our biggest challenges was just immersing ourselves within the homeless world, like learning the definitions, learning what a COC was, attending every meeting that we could to get our names out there and make those connections and establish those things. Another one we faced was we didn't expect the amount of case management that our HomeSafe clients were needing. When we find these clients that don't have support systems in place, technologically unsavvy, they require specialized housing. All those aspects really did require a lot of hands-on work. And for me and one other staff, it became very apparent that we had our hands full. So I think those were some of our bigger ones. Another one we really struggled with is we should have collaborated more. We were so new at learning that we didn't really immerse ourselves into the coordinated, the COC for ourselves. And once we got further into the grant about the second year, we realized there's all these other programs that could maybe help us with funding and maybe we could collaborate with, or, we weren't allowed to build a structure. So we were able to team up with the Homoit fundings and buy a trailer for a client and use HomeSafe funds to pull out their trailer and put it in a new spot. So it was kind of like just immersing ourselves and learning how to be in the homeless world. Another really big challenge we faced is we had a low-income senior apartment. It probably houses over 300 seniors, and the landlord is just not a very good guy, I'd like to say. He considers himself the judge, jury, and evictionator, I believe is what he says. And so he had utilized a program by filing evictions, and then we had gone on in pretty new and we're doing some hoard cleanups and some repairs. And later on, he came back around and billed us for clients being displaced and started to try to utilize our funding. So we learned from that model that we really need to get contracts in place when we're going forward with these sort of things. Some of our stumbling blocks, we ended up having to pay for new linoleum and flooring and things that we just weren't expecting. Clients needing a higher level of care, that's a big one. On some of these emergency bases, we received clients and didn't quite realize maybe they weren't able to be in a hotel independently. And then we had to do some repairs for the hotels for incontinence and mattresses and some things like that. So those are just a few of them. I could go on and on, but I'll let some other people share. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Shannon. Obviously, lots of challenges. Humboldt.
So for us, it was some of the administrative side of things. The amount of time that it took our fiscal department to process our payment requests for home safe interventions could be pretty frustrating for everyone involved, clients, vendors, social workers. And also the data collection and documentation required for reporting was pretty tedious and really didn't yield the best results. It required a lot of backfilling of missing data. You can expect for a pilot that they're still working the kinks out, so it's understandable that they didn't quite have the reporting process figured out, but boy, it was a struggle going on that journey with them.
I can imagine. Thanks for sharing that. Fresno, how about you guys?
Hi, Julie. Good morning, everyone. Sorry for the technical difficulties earlier. But some of the challenges that we've had here in Fresno, I think, are some similar to what other counties are facing when it comes to the limited housing stock. Some of the things that we've also had to deal with has been with client evictions on their records, and that makes it super challenging for us to transition them. Even I know some of our earlier referrals, we would get clients that were pretty much facing eviction, and so they had 30 days to leave their home. So trying to relocate them within the time before the eviction hit their record was very challenging. Once it hits the record, that's because it's more of a recent eviction. Again, it adds more barriers for us to advocate to the landlords to say, hey, we're going to place someone here. Are you willing to work with our clientele? And more likely than not, they're not going to want to work with us because we have clients that are facing that have recent evictions on their record. Sometimes when they're older evictions, we're able to work with them and say, well, it's already been a couple of years. Now they're getting assistance. We have the case management. We will follow up with them, that they're more open to working with some of our programs. But again, when it's a recent eviction, it really does hinder that client's ability to transition. Another thing is a lot of the senior population that we serve, they have fixed income. So nowadays, the prices of housing has drastically increased to where people are not able to have their own unit with just what they make in Social Security, or even having a full-time job. That's not enough money for them to be able to pay the rent, take care of the utilities, be able to, meet and be able to have enough income to pretty much sustain for long term. So that has definitely been one of the barriers that we've had, or lack of income. Some of the clients that we have don't have any income. So advocating for them with a landlord, it's, they listen to us, but they're not open or willing to work with our program. So it has made it very difficult. There's very limited senior housing, and when there are open wait lists, the wait list is from like 1 to 5 years. So that's a long time to be waiting for a unit to open up. Senior facilities are very expensive. They average around $2,000. Again, someone with a fixed income or just receiving SSI or SSDI, they're not going to have enough money to pay that amount. Some of the clients do have higher health needs, and there's long waiting lists to go into assisted living, which again, that's a huge issue. And a way for us that we've kind of work with those barriers or try to overcome them is we established partnerships with the room and boards. Prior to having APS, we were really not utilizing them. And so with APS, we kind of realized that that's probably the best way for us to go. And so we utilize them. We have clients there. Some of them choose to stay there for long term. Other ones are open to stay there just meanwhile we find a more permanent solution for them. So that's kind of how we've been going around that issue. We have a really strong, Westcare in general has been a leading agency for the Fresno Madera Continuum of Care. So we have a very strong connection with our COC and the ability to connect clients that do fall into homelessness into those services that meet their needs.
Great. Thanks for sharing that, Maria. So obviously, across all the counties, myriad challenges that go on with the trying to get seniors housed. But moving on to talk a little bit about some successes, I think it'd be great to hear some of the top successes as well that your county has identified with this Home Safe pilot. So I'm going to start with Humboldt on this to share a little bit about what's been going on there.
Hi, this is Leora from Humboldt County, and I would say that our biggest success was being able to keep elders and vulnerable adults in their homes. And that was directly related to the funding that we had that allowed people to get support as their needs were changing. So, we had longer cases. We kept our cases open for longer, and we did more case management. We were very available to help people as issues came up. We could hire contractors to fix plumbing or electrical issues, and we could just ensure that they were set up in the future with putting stuff into their homes that would help them succeed. And often that also meant hooking people up to medical supports as well, or behavioral health supports. And I would say we were very successful in that. There is also a housing shortage in our county, but we work very closely with our community connections, and having that extra money really made a difference to the amount of services we could provide. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Fresno.
Hi. I think for us, what has worked well has been definitely the collaboration with APS. So through our program, all of our referrals are funneled through the APS from the county. So we have a really strong collaboration with them where we do the warm handoffs, and we have monthly contract meetings where we're able to troubleshoot any issues that we're having with the contract or that we're foreseeing that we're going to have. So we're able to take a more proactive approach. Other things have been that we have, as I mentioned, we're very involved with our coordinated entry system through our COC. So we actually have increased the knowledge of APS through the community by doing presentations at those particular case conferencing meetings. Our COC is comprised of more than 35 different entities throughout Fresno and Madera counties. So us being able to present about the services kind of enabled everybody to learn about them. And we gave them the proper contact information for them to make referrals for the if they are assisting clients that need APS services. And then potentially once they go through the APS program or they do the crisis intervention, they get funneled through our program with which we will continue with the case management. The MDT meetings have been also very important component for us. I think that once we hit a wall, the MDT meetings are really good because we're able to discuss the case conference staff it with many different entities that can provide their perspective, that can give their advice, and can let us pretty much know how to move forward with continuing to assist our clients. And then the other thing has been the financial piece. I think that being able to help clients with things that normally other contracts are not able to assist, we have the ability to provide services to our clients through our program. And so we've been able to help from helping them repair their flooring, their bathrooms, so they can have a more stable and safe housing. And through, many other services that we've been able to provide financially speaking, again, helping them move into the room and boards, or just helping them with the rent, catching them up with any utility arrears as well, has been really great.
Yeah. So it sounds like a really big component of that has really been partnerships and collaboration and kind of thinking outside the box. And then similar to what I heard Humboldt just talking about, really having the funding to actually do some those repairs and those things to keep seniors in their homes if possible. So that's wonderful. It's great to hear. It's great to hear that there's going to be funding, lots more funding for HomeSafe to do even more of that.
Juliana,
go ahead.
I'd like to add a quick too. What's been really helpful too is the long-term case management after. So to provide some stabilization for those clients who really need additional time and linkage to other resources, I think that's been very successful and has enabled us our APS workers to really work on crisis cases and not long-term management cases when we're really not set up for that yet.
Yeah. Thanks for adding that, Michael. Los Angeles, could you share a little bit about the top successes in your counties that you've identified?
Sure. So for us, first and foremost, it really comes down to, fulfilling the actual purpose of the program and, being able to prevent hundreds of individuals from becoming homeless is really, just an amazing feeling for us. But then in addition to that, I think another major success is just to be able to establish or enhance the collaborations that we've had with our local continuum of care and homeless service sector providers, as well as other county and local agencies for referrals and placements. And then, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't also mention some particular actual success stories. And if I could just turn it over to Maritza to speak about very briefly about a couple of them. Maritza, I'd appreciate it if you could speak a little bit about that.
Sure. Thank you, Dave. We've had a couple of success stories through the program, which had been very, very challenging. As everybody has mentioned, some of the challenges before, but we were able to assist a client with their back rent to catch up on their rent arrears. It provided rent payment also for 2 months. The client was successfully exited from the Home Safe program because after that he was able to be connected to a shallow subsidy for an ongoing rental assistance of 35%. So these are the types of connections that we've been able to build with the service providers, where once we see that Home Safe will no longer be able to assist the client through the service providers that we've been working with, they have provided us with the information of other programmings that are available in their service areas, such as shallow subsidy. And at APS, we were not fully informed of those programs. So in cases like this individual now is able to go into shallow subsidy and be exited from Home Safe, which will be a long-term, more of a long-term assistance for that client. We've also had other clients where they have received enhanced case management, financial assistance through security deposits, again, rent payments. We were able to exit the client from Home Safe because we were able to find a secure Section 8 voucher for that particular client. Again, this is also leveraging all the information that we have learned through our partnerships with the service providers and any other programs that are currently happening in LA County. And I'll finally talk about another client who returned from Georgia and was homeless. The client was connected through the CES system, which is our homeless system in LA County. A referral was submitted for permanent housing, which will be Section 8 voucher again, and we were able to house that client. So these are some of our success stories. And again, I think going back to the collaboration that we've been able to build, not only with the 8 service providers that we're working with, but other agencies in LA County, we have been able to really come together to assist our clients where we find the need is greater often than the 6 months that Home Safe could help them with.
Yeah. Great. Thanks for sharing that, Maurice. Anything else from Los Angeles on that?
No, not really. I really wanted Maritza to speak about that because she is our Home Safe unit. She really is the one who has processed the referrals and really made it the success that it is, along with her manager, Juan Carlos Martinez. So, we just really appreciate all the great work that she's done for us.
Thank you.
Wonderful to hear collaborative partnerships like that. Thank you so much. Okay, so thanks for folks. We've gotten a few questions that have been put into the chat. Continue to please put questions into the chat, and we will be posing those to the panel as time allows. So thank you for, we've been capturing that information. I'm going to move on to the next question. This one is going to be starting with Riverside. So knowing what you know now, is there anything that you would have done differently when starting the Home Safe program?
Thanks for the question, Juliet. So right before Home Safe became available, we were really struggling with homeless clients and at-risk clients. And so we were looking at building a comprehensive homeless response inside our APS program. And so that had these 5 pillars in place. And one of the pillars was data, and one of the pillars was funding. One of them was case management that people had mentioned because it's fundamentally different than your regular APS work. Placements and inventory was an issue. And then case coordination through our MDT. So we had built a comprehensive program. And then Home Safe came along and really augmented that to a great degree. So as we were moving forward, I think 2 things happened. The volume of clients that we started getting wore us out. That and, just focusing on the next crisis, we drifted away from maintaining those 5 pillars. And so over this last, say, 6-8 months, we're reestablishing all of those 5 pillars. Your data requirements beyond Home Safe, some board of supervisors is going to ask you a question about how many folks have you housed permanently. all of a sudden you have a very different data element to chase in APS because we're short term and they're using the HUD definition. So that opens up the funding. You've got to continue after funding. Inventory is a chronic issue across the board. Case coordination is essential, right? And then the case management, always talking about, everybody's talked about, these aren't 1 month and close. These are 9 months, 10 months, 12 months cases. So what would we have done differently? We would have stuck to the pillars and not lost sight of them, because the home safe efforts are really embedded in a broader approach, most likely for most counties. That's what we would do differently.
Great, thanks for that information, Barry. Los Angeles.
So yeah, for us, we certainly feel like we might have benefited from having a full unit of social workers handling all of the home safe cases that we received. And it's certainly, I mean, just based on the sheer magnitude of the program, and it's something that we may revisit and look into moving into the next phase. And you know, just to have a core group of social workers who can keep the investigation open at least until the service provider's caseworker makes successful contact with the client. And then perhaps if we had been able to pilot the program in just a couple of the service planning areas rather than, you know, doing the full scale 8 areas, just essentially to see how it went and what we could learn from it, and you know, and then move on to all of the different areas, essentially the ones that needed it the most. Perhaps that's something that we might have benefited from doing differently. But, you know, I mean, these are kind of small gripes compared to the success that we've had with the program. So we do appreciate that.
Thanks for sharing that, David. How about Placer? Can you talk about anything you might have done differently when starting the program?
Yeah, we are revamping HomeSafe 2.0 in a lot of different ways. I think one of the first things we did is it was the first time our APS county had received any kind of funding. And so we were so excited about that we pulled everything into APS instead of utilizing the other systems. So I think going forward, something that we're going to do different, like I said earlier, is collaboration, but we want to somehow identify how to get our subset of population into the homeless world, and to our homeless partners, instead of trying to pull all that knowledge into just our APS division and training everybody on that. So that's something we are going to do differently. In this next round, we're exploring doing some options like having some respite homes. I was able to establish a hotel that was able to take some clients for us, and also a board and care, but we realized that we need to expand that. So we're going to work hard on having some immediate care available for clients in emergency situations. And we're also looking at contracting with a medical doctor who can roll out and do our 602s when placement becomes available, COVID testing, rapid TB testing. So we don't have to displace those clients, wait for a doctor's appointment, which can take 2 weeks, place them in the ER to get those kind of things passed. We can actually bring a doctor directly to them to fast track that placement option if a SNF is more appropriate or a board and care is located. Thank you.
Great, thanks for sharing that. Some great ideas there. Humboldt, yes. I haven't heard from Humboldt yet. Humboldt, was there anything you would have done differently in starting the Home Safe program?
Yes, going back to our data collection challenges, I think we would have done more intensive training on case documentation with the social workers from the very beginning, and really making sure they had that piece down, because it would have saved us a lot of time down the road. The difficult part of that was that the direction was constantly changing, so that makes it even more confusing. And so I would say one of the things that we learned through this process is that collaboration isn't just with, community partners and landlords, but also with the state housing department and For us, the makers of Leaps, Jump, that's our case management system, really having the lines of communication open all the time with them and utilizing them when we have questions was really important. Just one moment, sorry.
Sounds like you have somebody who has some other great information to impart to us. Maybe on home state, maybe on something else. I'll go ahead and go over to Fresno County. We'll come back to Humboldt.
So for us, I would say that we need to, similar to what other counties were talking about, orient or training staff earlier on to make sure they fully understood the program and the services. For us particularly, as I mentioned, APS case or home safe referrals, are funneled through APS. So at the beginning of the program, the referrals were pretty low to minimum. We get like 1 referral a month, 2 referrals, 3, then we would have 0. So if we would have had more training up front, I think that would have also helped us increase our referral system or increase our referrals to be able to serve more people. The baseline for our pilot was to serve 100 individuals for the pilot term. However, we ended up serving probably less than half. And so that would have definitely helped again with our target of serving 100 individuals. So again, just pretty much more training right off the bat and ensuring that everybody understood and was on the same page regarding the APS services.
Definitely important. Thanks for sharing that, Maria. Back to Humboldt. Was there anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that we're really trying to encourage CDSS housing and Jump to communicate with each other a little bit better this time around. Jump is really, they see us as their client, and so we end up being the middle person between them and the state. And so I'm really encouraging them to have some more conversations amongst themselves and work some of these things out. I think that'll be easier this next time around.
Great, thanks for sharing that. And I know our folks are here from the States. So it's good information that they're also hearing as well. Not that you probably haven't shared that, but yeah, thanks for sharing that. Moving on to the next question. This question is specifically for Fresno to answer. If I can get it to move. Okay. Could you share with us what are some of the best practices that you have established in working with other partnering agencies on the Home Safe program? I know you have partnering agencies here presenting today, so could you share a little bit about what's been working well for you guys?
Yes, as I mentioned earlier, I think that for us, one of the things that has worked really well is the fact that our agency has been very involved with the coordinated entry system for us to be, so that allows us access to, again, 30 plus different agencies that provide services to people that are either experiencing homelessness or that are at risk of experiencing homelessness. So we're definitely been able to leverage those resources to help our clients. So through our coordinated entry involvement, that definitely has helped us. Another best practice has definitely been the MDT's meetings. It provided us access to a lot of other vendors that are not really involved with the coordinated entry system. So it kind of expanded that for us as far as providers here in the community, such as the medical staff. I mean, they don't attend our case conferencing meetings through coordinated entry system, but they do attend the MDT meetings and are able to provide their opinion, their advice when it comes to us discussing those that have higher needs, a higher level of care, and it's how do we move forward because, they don't have income, how are we going to pay for it? What are other resources that perhaps we haven't yet tapped into? And so it really has helped us to be able to move forward and continue those services for our clients. Access to public attorneys, again, other community providers, hospitals here locally, and in-home supportive services have been some of the key ones to have helped us to be, again, continue to provide those wraparound services to our clients and be able to provide the best services possible and available to them.
Great. Thanks, Maria. Michael, did you have anything to add?
Actually, too, we've actually partnered with an organization that is working with our room and boards. And so they've created an association and are working with actually both adult mental health services and we have become part of that to create some standards around room and boards and expectations. And so we've been able to identify those like room and board facilities or owners who are more willing to work with our population, maybe a little more reputable, willing to, understand that we want rental agreements. We want to know how much it's going to cost for the person to stay in your room and board before they get placed, and not this kind of, sliding scale situation where it's like, oh, you make $900, well, we're going to charge you $800. So you make $1,200, we're going to charge you $1,100. Now it's a stable fee, which I think has been very helpful too in being able to whittle out some of those less reputable vendors.
Great, thanks for adding that. Sounds like you guys have a number of great things in the works in establishing some best practices. Moving on to question number 7. This question is for Humboldt first. Obviously you guys have all talked about this. I think this is a challenge throughout California, and every county is going to experience this, right? But how have you managed inventory and housing shortage issues in your county? The reality of inventory and housing shortage issues in your county. Humboldt.
Well, this is Leora. We have had to look at alternative housing options. I would say our most successful issue or thing that we dealt with was that we fixed clients' trailers. We moved people into motels when we needed to, while improvements were made on existing housing. We explored home sharing, but during COVID that was not ultimately successful. But there is a program run by another agency that we will reconnect with. We looked at family and church and other community supports. We sometimes helped move people across the country to a relative where they could get the care that they needed because their housing couldn't serve them anymore. And then the other thing that we did, which was absolutely wonderful, was with permission from CDSS, we bought 2 very cheap trailers, dumped the 2 unsafe trailers that our clients were living in, and that was basically all we needed to do. And those people were just very unsafe in their homes, but could continue living independently. So that was a real success. And like every other county, we struggle with housing issues, and we have to think out of the box. We try and get the client, if they're able to participate in getting housing for themselves, which isn't always successful, but sometimes it is. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for that, Leora. Fresno, can you speak to what you've done for housing shortage issues?
Yes, I already touched a little bit on it before. So for us, just like everybody else, by experiencing that the cost of living has drastically increased and it's not able to upkeep with what people make or what they the income that they receive. So for us, as I mentioned earlier, we have been utilizing the room and boards, and as Michael mentioned more recently, the Independent Living Association also kind of partnership with the coordinated entry system for all of the people to be able to utilize, and they are looking to have more houses. Anytime that they have houses that are in the works, that they're getting ready to put out in the market, they actually send us an email to the community listserv. Our community coordinator will send it out to everybody and say, hey, the Independent Living Association is going to have a house which is going to have X number of beds, or this number of units are coming up. Make sure that you guys are, keeping up with the emails. Make sure that you guys are reaching out to them. If you have clients that are going to be in need of housing, that you start informing the client, because we operate very client centered, right? So sometimes you can offer the client a room and board, you can offer share living, but if they say no, then it's no. at the end of the day, right? And so those are some of the struggles that we've had, but I think that partnership has really helped us increase or work with the shortage of housing stock. And other things have been also with those individuals that actually have a support system or that have family members to try to work with them to see if they will be willing to go back or move in with them or have somebody move in with the client to ensure that they are having that support system, because oftentimes when the clients are already going through so much, and if they're living by themselves, some of them have kind of fallen into depression if they don't have a strong support system. So we also try to provide that with the family members. And if there's a family member that can take them in, it's more stable and safe housing for them as well. So those are some of the things that we've also, again, been using. Share housing is something that we more recently started looking more into to see if we currently have clients enrolled that have, especially those that have fixed income, that they could, be good roommates or that they're compatible to some extent, so that we can avoid having any future issues between, with us moving them together as roommates. So we have not moved anybody yet, but that's something that we have been exploring to see if we can find, again, people that are compatible to pitch that idea and see how they respond to it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it sounds like from both Humboldt and Fresno now, and I'm sure all the other counties, and I've kind of heard it weave throughout all of your responses. I mean, the reality of inventory and housing shortages is you've got to be creative, right? You've got to pull out of the stops and look for all the different options that you possibly could have for short-term housing, while you look for long-term housing, while you look for something affordable, while you look for landlords that'll work with you and not try to evict everyone. So yeah, this is an ongoing challenge. So I'm sure, it's great for the new counties new counties who are here to HomeSafe to hear what you guys have worked on as they try to tackle these challenges going forward. So we have one more question before we're going to take a quick break. So I'm going to go ahead and pose this question. This question is going to be for all of our counties, but I'm going to start with Placer on this one. So can you talk a little bit about what are some of the common client issues that you've experienced in administering this program, and how have you worked to address them?
So I'd say some of our common client issues is that cognitive impairment, just facing that where they need that extra hand holding just to accomplish reminders, contacting them, writing calendars, kind of our standard APS stuff we do when we have cognitive impairment, but actually showing up when those doctor's appointments needed to be done, getting them over there. Clients that are not internet savvy, that's huge for our clientele, unable to navigate even how to find housing nowadays. So we would bring in our laptops and we would do the paperwork by hand, and we would do the follow-up signatures and follow up with that sort of thing. We also, let's see some of our other challenges. We'd run into people with no support systems. If you don't have a support system, it's very difficult to resolve and get to places if you don't have transportation. Shared housing was another one. We delved into a lot of shared housing and found ourselves doing some mediation, a lot of mediation. Not everybody gets along, and people are kind of stuck in their ways at certain ages and might not be flexible with changing, and just getting people to kind of understand what housing was actually available. A lot of our seniors and dependent adults have been out of the housing market for a long time. And so realizing that, you're not going to have that porch with the bottom floor access that the dog can walk on, or this place might not be pet friendly, or you might have to share a space in an apartment. I think those were some of our challenges. But, I think just educating clients and client-centered and walking through what's available for them and showing them the options and allowing them to explore things themselves was really helpful, because we can talk at things all we want, but until somebody wants to have that change themselves or look into things, that seemed to be the difference for me, letting them kind of be the driver of it and supporting what choices they wanted, instead of kind of what we felt might be best for them. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Shannon. How about Riverside? Can you speak to this one?
Hi. So I have to agree with everything that she brought up, but I find We do have a lot of clients that like to stay in their current locations. They're comfortable, they have their resources, their physicians, and they're not really willing to move to different cities and areas where there may be more affordable housing available. Sometimes they can become non-compliant looking for permanent housing, and at times have some unattainable expectations that we can't always meet. We have a lot of clients that have animals and they find a lot of comfort in their animals and they're unable to relocate without them. Some of them would prefer to stay on the streets than to give up their animals. There's also a lot of untreated substance and mental health issues, and we are actively trying to partner with behavioral health to connect them with the needed services. We are engaging our clients on multiple levels with many face-to-face visits, and we're incorporating them to create their service plans with us. We have been out in the community and incentivizing landlords to accept our clients that may have some credit issues, some prior evictions, and we are always trying to be community involved to see if we can find landlords and property managers who are willing to work with us, and explaining to them that we're not just going to house our clients, but we're also going to assist for a few months down the road into the transition of paying bills and making sure that they're stabilized in their homes.
Thanks for sharing that, Grace. Los Angeles, what has been some of the client issues you've seen?
Yeah, for us, it's definitely the same exact issues regarding perhaps the inflexibility of moving to a different geographical area or just a different type of setting. I think it really comes down to the fear of the unknown. People just simply get used to the way things are, and just the idea of a wholesale change is really pretty daunting. And so, we've had to deal with that to a large degree. We've also had trouble contacting clients. Once we initially make contact with them, often their phone has been turned off, and it can be beyond their control, or perhaps they didn't even have a phone to begin with. And then in addition to that, certainly one thing that was frustrating for us, and this perhaps is not so much a client issue, but a programmatic issue. At the beginning of the program, we were finding that a lot of the potential clients were just simply not meeting the criteria and the threshold of the standard assessment tool that we were using, and yet they were still clearly at risk of homelessness. So for that, we worked closely with our Homeless Services Authority to develop a proposed rent burden certification form that looked at financial hardships, such as the question of are the clients not even paying for their own medication or their own food just to be able to stay housed. And so, of course, we ran this certification form by the state to make sure that we could use the qualifications that were included. And thankfully, they said yes, and that really went a long way in improving the situation and being able to close that gap and serve a lot more clients.
Great, thanks for that, David. How about Fresno? Anything to add here?
Yes, I think that one of the client issues has been, again, with the senior population, it's definitely building that trust. Right off the bat, they don't know you, so they're not going to be very open. They're very leery when it comes to, a new case manager coming into, hey, I'm here to help you. So it's definitely building that trust takes time. So like I mentioned earlier, originally was we had a plan to have the APS case manager go out to the client's home or along with our case manager, so that way they can do a warm handoff, introduce one another to say, this is one of our providers that will be continuing with the case management. We're still going to be involved, but they're mainly going to be the ones providing X services. And really kind of letting the client know that we're there to help them, rather than us just kind of showing up like, hey, I'm your APS case manager, and them not really knowing who we are, what services we provide. So again, building that trust and building that rapport with the client, it's definitely something that it has taken time, just given the population that we work with. There's also the misunderstanding of the services provided from the client's end. So they might think APS is involved, so they might think that they're going to get removed from their home, so they don't want the services, so they're automatically opposed to receiving any type of services. So really educating them on why we're there and the services that we're actually going to be providing to help them and be a better support to them. And then another thing has definitely been the client not wanting or not being open to what's available for them as far as housing is, So having very high demands that are, almost impossible to fulfill, given, again, the housing style, given the barriers that they come with. We don't want to set them up for failure. So when we are looking for long-term housing, we're thinking of placing them in a place where they're going to be, even if we provide short-term rental assistance, that the client will be able to essentially take over and be able to sustain. It doesn't make sense to put them in a place that's $1,500 a month that we pay for 3 months and then they can't pay it for the remainder of the time. So we really try to think long-term, and unfortunately the housing availability that it's within their range tends to be in areas that they don't want to move into, or they tend to not be the best units. And so oftentimes we do get pushback from the clients of them not wanting what's available for them at that time.
Thanks, Maria. Humboldt, any last thoughts on client issues?
Sure. One of the biggest issues that our clients have is they don't have access to health or behavioral health treatments and support. And they're also pretty isolated. So as Maria said, we have to build a lot of trust with our clients. We have found during COVID that many of our clients have been hoarding for years. They've maybe lived in houses that they inherited from their parents, and it takes a long time to build trust. So our social workers go out and spend a long time doing some case management in order to build trust to move forward. We have partnered with a hoarding specialist, support specialist, and she's going to go out with the social worker once the social worker has built some trust and see if we can help make the houses safe. Most of our clients want the help. We kind of tell them that we're the good news when we go out and see them. We ask them what they want most. Most of them want to stay in their homes, and so that's what we want too. So we build strong connections with our clients, and we're working harder than we ever have. But we're finding that it's very successful. We also are now working with code enforcement a lot and abatement to try and get people safe in their homes and paying rent. So the most common issues I would say is loneliness, isolation, grief at the way things are changing, and we have to address those stuff if we're going to be able to move forward on housing stuff too. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Okay, so we're going to take a quick break here. We've gotten about halfway through our questions. We've heard a lot from our counties thus far on HomeSafe, but there's more to come. We're going to talk a little bit about MDTs. We're going to talk about funding challenges and utilizing funding and some other topics coming forward. But we're going to go ahead and take a 15-minute break, but we do have a question for everybody who's here today first. So we're looking to create a HomeSafe learning series that's going to support ongoing county peer-to-peer discussions, right? So if we wanted to find out from folks on what HomeSafe topics are you wanting to have some more in-depth discussions and peer sharing discussions centered around. Obviously, we're touching on a lot of different issues today, but we're only scratching the surface, right? So in thinking about what are the things you want to learn a lot more about as you're coming onto this program, take a few minutes if you would while you're on break. Think about that. Pop your information into the chat. We'll be collecting that information, and we'll talk to you a little bit about at the end of today's session about what we're going to do with that to try to help us plan the most meaningful series going forward. So now let's go ahead and take a break. We will convene back again at how about 10:30. So that gives us about 14 minutes, and we will go to the second half of our panel discussion. Thanks. Okay. Thanks, Mia. Thanks for everyone who's been putting information into the chat. Really appreciate it on topics on home safe. If you'd like to see some deeper dives, some more further county sharing and discussion going on. Some great ideas so far. A couple of votes for creative housing options when there is that lack of affordable housing. Some information on some training and worker tools and resources. Working with behavioral health, utilizing behavioral health services, data requirements, preparing your APS home team, which kind of goes back with the trainings and worker knowledge. So great. So feel free to keep putting ideas and things you would like to see some more deeper dives on in the chat. We're going to be collecting those, and I'll let you know what we're going to do with that information again, like I said, as we wrap today's session. So we still have a number of questions to pose to our panelists. Thanks so far to our wonderful panel who's been providing some great insights. Moving on to the next question, we are going to pose this question to Humboldt. So Humboldt, can you talk to us a little bit about what funding obstacles you have experienced and what have you done to try to lessen these obstacles in the future?
So I think the only big obstacle we've come up against would just be not knowing whether the item that we wanted to purchase or the service that we wanted to purchase was an appropriate use of home safe funds. So going back to just keeping the lines of communication open with CDSS and checking in with them when we had questions, the good thing is they're really available to help staff cases. So they're very quick to offer to schedule a conference call and discuss with the team. So that really helps a lot. And I think we just established that the most important factor when we're having those questions is would the individual be without housing if not for the home safe intervention? So just really reiterating that with social workers because, of course, we have this funding and we want to help, and it's very tempting to offer services right away to somebody. But we really have to explore the client's other resources and make sure that this expense directly relates to their housing crisis.
Thanks for sharing that perspective, Danielle. Really appreciate it. On the same topic of funding, moving on to the next question. For Los Angeles, could you talk a little bit about what other funding sources you've drawn on to implement and or administer the Home Safe program in your county?
Yes. So for us, mainly it's been the APS realignment and then the local Measure H, for homeless and at-risk funding. They were both used as matching funding to implement Home Safe. And then the clients were connected to the local continuum of care for homeless resources through the coordinated entry system, referral system.
Great. I believe that the match requirement for the expansion has been lifted. Am I right in that assumption, David? If you know.
Yes, that's correct. Yes, there had been a full match, and that's been completely eliminated. So that's good news.
Yeah, that is good news. It certainly does free up additional funding potentially that folks could use. That otherwise they would have to try to figure out where they get that match from. So yeah, that's great. Okay, next question. we've heard a lot about this. Folks have talked about it in numerous answers they've given thus far. That we've heard about MDTs. So I'd like for a couple, our counties to talk about, do you have regular multidisciplinary team meetings? And of course, what has that offered to expand to your home safe program? So let's start with Riverside. Can you talk a little bit about your MDTs?
Sure. So we have monthly MDT meetings, and we have over 90 participants. And the participants range from other county agencies to nonprofits to community leaders. With this setup, we can have anybody that has a particular client or a situation that they've come across. They can present it at this meeting, and the people involved in the meeting brainstorm together to see if we can come out with some solutions to the issues that the client or the agency is having. We've built a really strong relationship with the attendees, and the forum that's created feels like a very good space to share information and also to get further resources for the client. It's a really good experience when you have people from all walks of life in there. We have some attorneys, some medical professionals, some people that work for either the Board of Supervisors or the local senators that can help advocate. We've been able to make a lot of connections that are really solution-based, and we try to make decisions on solutions and what steps are needed to continue forward. We also do follow-ups to a lot of these cases to see if they were successful, what we could have done to make it better, or what other resources are needed to proceed forward to making solutions and different progress that we can do for the clients. And we also look at other interventions that could be completed so that we can be successful in servicing them.
That's great. 90 folks. That's a big MDT. Placer, could you talk a little bit about your multidisciplinary process?
Yeah, we also do our MDTs on a regular basis. We do them monthly, and we have partnered with a variety of agencies. We have our legal services department that we field eviction defense with and see if there's any creative solutions we can go around preventing the eviction. We partner with Placer Independent Resource Centers, and they come in and put in our grab bars and try to secure houses and make them safer. And if clients are capable, they can help do paperwork, evaluations. We work with our Senior First. They work with our transportation, our Meals on Wheels. We do, they're also high cap specialists. We have our advocates for mentally ill housing, AMI, are also present. They're one of our contractors, and they handle most of Placer County's contracted housing, so we utilize them. And then we use our own behavioral partners, behavioral health, whole person care, so that we weren't duplicating services. And then in one area we would have loved to expand and invite to our get an MOU with is our substance use services. We did not have them at the table, and we really felt that would have been viable. We did arrange
I know,
for them.
it was hilarious. I was like, where's the sound?
So we did work on going on some dual home visits with them for some of our more challenging cases to see if clients were ready for that change. And so that was very beneficial. But yeah, monthly MDTs really helped us learn what's out there. And in fact, even though we had exhausted our Home Safe funding, we continue to hold those meetings until we restart up Home Safe again, and we just got our allotment, so that's great. And that has allowed us to continue to know what other resources counties are having, what they're using their funding from, because there seems to be a lot of streams of funding, and what resources are expanding. Is it a different transportation? Is it a different food service? So it's remained keeping us in contact to kind of do a full wraparound services for these clients.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that, Shannon. How about Los Angeles?
Yes, MDT meetings are definitely an integral part of the program for us. We hold them twice per month, and they incorporate our social workers, our service providers, the Homeless Services Authority, and the program Home Safe program staff. Maritza, can I just ask you to speak to just to go into a little bit more detail about what's discussed at these meetings?
Sure. So during these meetings that are held twice a month, what usually happens is that service providers will reach out to me and talk about a specific client. And at that moment, we discuss who we can invite over to the meeting. If we need to invite over their supervisors for the APS social workers, for example, we'll invite them over for the day of the meeting. If we need more mental health, we can invite someone over for mental health. So we try to find out a little bit more about the particular case in order to discuss it. And during those meetings, we find that because we've been working in silos, APS is very used to working with this population, but many times, from time to time, because the homeless crisis in LA County has become increasingly more and more, we see that our service providers have also seen a lot of our APS clients, eligible clients. So we find that with these partnerships, we have been able to collaborate a lot better. And again, we learn what kind of services the service providers have, and they learn what kind of services we have. And we often find great resolutions for our clients. A lot of the clients that we do deal with have diminished capacity, so we do utilize some of the resources that we already have in LA County to try to see if somebody can go out into their home and assess their ability to do their daily activities, for example. So in the future, we're hoping that we will continue to grow our MDT, but we also have besides the two conferencing case calls, that's when we really focus on the cases on twice a month. And then once a month, we have calls with our LASA representative and all the service providers. We all get on a call, and that's when they also have the opportunity to ask any questions about the program, any questions about the funding or contracting. That's when we also have our legal aid representative that works with us, be a part of the call. So any programming type of questions that the service providers may have, and even at times if they bring a challenging case with other service providers, sometimes another service provider knows about some resource that a service provider in another service area may not know about. So we really try to engage each other as much as we can. So it ends up being 3 times a month that we speak to the service provider. And of course, I do it on a daily basis. And that has been a great success when it comes to Home Safe in LA County, I believe.
Thanks for sharing that. It's interesting because I heard all three of you speak, and you're talking about who are MDT partners, who are folks you're bringing into your MDTs regularly. I heard legal come up a couple of times. I was going to mention that is a question that was posed earlier in the session about how folks interact with legal services to assist some of these clients. So it sounds like, I mean, there might be ongoing communication going on as well, but it sounds like through your MDTs, that's another place where you can engage attorneys and legal aid to assist in navigating some of those challenges as well, which is great. Last but certainly not least on this one, how about Fresno? Can you talk a little bit about your MDT process?
Yes, similar to many of the other providers, we have on monthly, and the same thing, the composition of our MDT meetings consists of district attorneys, Kaiser attends these meetings, St. Agnes, Community Regional Medical Center, Victim Services. We even have the Sheriff Department attend the meetings, Central Valley Regional Center, In-Home Supportive Services, medical staff, and just in general, attorneys that attend these meetings, which again allows us to expand on the services. As I mentioned, those services that we're well connected with through the coordinated entry system, a lot of these providers don't actually attend those meetings, or they're not really as involved in coordinated entry. So we, through the MDT meetings, we're able to connect with them and be able to link our clients to those services. And for us, it has been great. So the way that we actually do the MDT meetings is that if we have a client that we're struggling with, or we just kind of, we don't know what the next steps are for us to take with this client to continue helping them, we actually provide they compile like a PowerPoint presentation. So we answer questions before, as far as, we present the case, what are the things that we've done already, what has been the outcomes of those strategies, what are the barriers that we're facing, the approaches that we've taken with the client, and also we discuss all this, and then we ask them for advice, or ask if there's been similar cases that they might have dealt with in the past, and what was the approach, or what should be something for us to continue. And so it has really worked out well for us. It really allows us to, again, present those really hard cases, and allows us to have next steps outlined at the end of the meeting to be able to, again, keep moving forward with helping the client. So for us, they've been really great.
Yeah, it seems like listening to all of you guys discuss your MDT seems like a very integral part of the success of your program. So kudos to you for keeping that partnership alive through MDTs. But speaking of partnerships, our next question is about MOUs. So I want to ask the question of a few of the counties here. With which agencies has your county created memorandums of understanding, MOUs, for your Home Safe program to ensure its success? So let's start with LA on this one. Can you talk a little bit about your MOUs?
Sure. So like we mentioned earlier, we do have an MOU with our LA Homeless Services Authority, or LAHSA, and then they in turn have subcontracts with each of the 8 homeless service providers. And in addition to that, we have an MOU with our Department of Public Social Services because, they administer our whole program. And so we do have to have an MOU in place with them just in order to operate. But that's basically it for us.
Okay. Thanks for sharing that. How about Placer? Can you talk about your MOUs?
Yeah, basically our MOUs are the same partners that we have at our MDTs. So we partnered with, I said, like our Seniors First area. We partnered with Northern Legal Services of California, AMI. We have MOUs with our own ASOC division for our behavioral health, whole person care, things along those lines. The same people that we're bringing to those MDTs every month.
Yeah, thanks for that. Fresno?
So Julie, I know that Fresno's actually listed in here, but we don't have any other MOUs other than just the contract that we have, county and the subcontractor, which is Westcare.
So let me answer that question.
Oh, Michael says yes.
So we do actually have existing MOUs with the department, with our Department of Behavioral Health, and so with the Public Guardian's Office, and so they typically will attend our MBT as well. We also have an MOU with Public Health, and so we have 2 public health nurses who are co-located with our APS and IHSS staff, and as well as MOU with the Sheriff's Office, Fresno PD, and the District Attorney's Office.
Thanks for expanding upon that, Michael, and kind of just segueing to the next question, which is also starting with Fresno. So, Fresno, you've talked about you contract with an outside vendor who's here today. Maria's here today representing. Could you let us know, what does the communication look like? How do you keep those communication lines open, and how are you able to determine when you are able to close the APS case?
Do you want me to answer that one, Mike?
Sure, go ahead and start.
Okay, so as far as us on our end, we don't close the cases until we feel that the client is going to be stable once they're housed in a permanent location. If for us, there's really no point of us closing the case when we know the client is unstable. They're still having a lot of barriers or facing a lot of issues because they're just going to pretty much recidivate. So we really try to look at, or do they have we provided all the wraparound services that are available for them to help them sustain? Do they have a support system that they can that can help them? And also, like Michael mentioned earlier.
How are you?
Oh.
Hey, good. I wanted to see.
And I need to remind you to please mute yourself if you are.
If I could decide a different time.
Can I get help with that?
Sorry, I'm trying to figure out who it is.
Stacey Lindbergh.
So I have something I have to be at from 9:30 to 11. So after that.
Oh, here we go.
Good.
Thank you. Apologize. Go ahead, Maria.
That's fine. Sorry. Lost my place here. 1 second. So again, we accept the clients only once we feel that they're already going to be, they're solid. They're going to remain house. They have the wraparound services that they need to be able to sustain long term. And so once we determine that, then we end up closing the case. However, we do the follow-ups 6 months post-exit and then the 12 months post-exit. We also look in their coordinated entry system to see if they have recidivated, because if they have, they would be in the coordinated entry system. And they use the homeless management information system to track that information. So we also cross-reference that just to ensure that the clients do not recidivate. And if they do, we're able to know, because they'll come back to the system. As far as on the APS side, they close the investigation once they hand the referral to the Home Safe program for us to provide a case management and wraparound services. However, they do keep their referrals open in case we have to go back and, hey, there's something else going on. And they also have to provide some other additional services. Anything else, Michael?
To add to that, yes. So we do meet monthly with the vendor. So we sit down and we'll have a meeting, over the clients that are being served, any new referrals, any challenges or struggles that maybe West Care's had with some clients. We have had some clients that I think I know of at least one where we essentially fired the client because they were just non-compliant. They wanted us or Care to do everything, and they weren't going to do anything to assist in, finding stable housing. And so, it's like, if you're not willing to help yourself, then, you need to fill out the applications. And they weren't even willing to fill out the applications. They wanted us to do it, and there was no physical reason why they couldn't. So, we had a pretty lengthy conversation about, those type of clients and whether, at what point do we just say, we can't serve you. You're not participating in the solution. You're creating more challenges and basically refusing services. So I think that communication has been very helpful. I know the workers, they've shared their cell phone numbers with West Care staff so that they can get a hold of them, whether they're in the office or in the field. And we've been really very, I would say, rigid in the expectation that there be a warm handoff between the APS social worker and the West Care social worker. I don't like just referral. I want, the APS worker to meet with the client and with the West Care worker. So there is that warm handoff. So the client doesn't have to explain their life situation all over again to a stranger.
Yeah. That's great that you're doing that, Michael. I think it's extremely important to incorporate that into your practice. So I know, LA, you are also working with an outside vendor. Could you speak a little bit about how you keep those communication lines open and how you guys determine where when to close your cases?
Yeah, certainly. We have a very open line of communication with essentially all of the partners that we're working with. Our internal home services program representative serves as essentially the liaison between our social workers and our service providers. And the service providers can contact the social workers directly as needed for additional questions. As far as when the case can be closed, basically the investigation is closed when the social worker determines that the client is safe. However, the service provider does continue to work on the client's housing, stability. And then our Home Safe rep within the department continues to communicate with the service provider for any kind of troubleshooting and case conferencing and anything else that might come up.
Great, thanks. Anyone else from LA have anything to add?
Also, one of the things that we were able to have as part of Home Safe is that because Home Safe is more flexible than the standard prevention services, our service providers may encounter a client who might be a potential APS client but does not qualify for the regular prevention services. So then they reach out to Maritza and create a reverse referral to determine if this client qualifies for APS services and APS Home Safe. So that was another way of leveraging resources where we do a two-way communication between the service providers and APS.
Great. Thanks for sharing that, Juan Carlos. Maria, go ahead. Just something to add?
Can I add something? Yes, I forgot to mention regarding the communication. So something that the case manager from Wesker does with the APS case manager is that before even going out to see the client, they will communicate prior to kind of discuss the case. That way it allows our case manager to kind of gain the background knowledge that they need. So they don't go in there without even knowing where the client is located or what the client is going through, what are the barriers. So they actually do that prior to meeting with the client. I think that also kind of helps the client. And again, talking about that trust and knowing that we already know their case and understand what they're going through has also allowed us to be able to build that report than just kind of showing up without knowing anything. And we kind of learned that early on in the program. So we started doing that, or the case manager started having that connection and truly discussing the cases. That has also helped us to ensure that the clients that we are enrolling into the program are actually clients that are fit for a program. And if there's clients that perhaps have higher level of needs that the program cannot provide, we discuss it with APS and perhaps we determine other options for them. So.
Great. Thanks for adding that, Maria. Appreciate that. Moving on, this has come up in a couple of the questions that folks have posted in the chat thus far. So I wanted to have counties speak to what case management system or systems are you using, and how and where are you collecting your home safe data? So I'm going to start with Placer on this one. Could you talk a little bit about how it's working in Placer County?
Yeah, we actually built our data subset into the HMIS system, the Homeless Management Information System. And that was very useful for us. But when we first started, our county council let us know that due to it being identified as APS clients, we couldn't have that data be seen by the other agencies, which kind of took a lot of the point out of being embedded in the HMIS. So we did utilize the data tracking in the HMIS, but we also utilized Panosoft. Panoramic is our APS software. We're not a LEAPS county. And in Panos, we would back up a lot of the paperwork, the PRVI, SPDAT, some of the screening tools, some of the ROIs and things like that we had in documentation. So we were almost using two systems. The reason we were doing that is we weren't sure if HomeSafe is going to be expanded, although we're very thankful it was. But the HMIS license itself for us is around $2,000 per employee to have. And so we weren't sure if we were going to have an ongoing access to that data going forward if HomeSafe didn't continue. So luckily it has. We're going to continue to work on being in the HMIS system. And we did finally get cleared from our county council, which is great news, that as long as we add HomeSafe to our ROI, then we can be unlocked within the system, which is going to allow us an amount of collaboration that'll be pretty incredible. So we're excited about that. Thank you.
Oh, that's great that you made those strides with county councils. They can often be, they're there to help, but sometimes it can often be a roadblock, it seems like, in some of those things too. There to keep the counties out of trouble. Humboldt, can you talk a little bit about your case management systems and how and where you're collecting your data?
Yeah, we had originally wanted to use HMIS, but our county's interpretation of the regulations around that was if we were to do HMIS intakes, we would have to be doing them for anybody that walked in our door, not just our own APS clients. And we do not have the capacity for that. So we ended up building it into LEAPS. And I think I've already talked about those challenges. So.
Oh, okay. How about Fresno? Can you talk a little bit about the systems you're using?
So as far as us with Wesker, we have our own clinical database system. So where we're tracking demographic information and we use it to do case notes. And I believe the county, they're still using the LEAPS program to track any demographic and other information.
Michael, did you have anything to add on that?
other than the challenges of, as others have shared, but I have one of my supervisors is the one who makes sure and goes in and makes sure the data is accurate before we submit it out. But yeah, it's been a little challenging, especially earlier on. I think we've worked out the bugs now. But, you know, as in all good things, it takes a while to get there.
Yeah. Data collection, case management systems, ongoing challenge. Let's move on to the next question. Humboldt, I'd like to have you kick us off here. Could you talk about what types of services are most commonly provided to the HomeSafe clients you've seen thus far? And on average, what do they cost in your county?
So the top 5 interventions for us, or the direct services that we pay for with HomeSafe funds, are rent payments, utilities, deep cleanings, temporary housing, and caregiver services or respite care. And the average total dollars spent per client on direct services would be $2,781.
You've got some really great figures. $2,781. Yeah. How about Fresno? Can you speak to this one too?
Yes, I think for us it's more in the range of like $4,000 to $5,000 that we've been spending per client. We take the average. And for our contract, we do more of the prevention piece. All of the clients that we've been servicing, they're already housed, or again, those that have been in the verge of eviction, we're actually able to transition them, but they're still under prevention services. So I would say about $4,000 to $5,000.
Okay. Placer, what about your county? What's it like in your county?
I'd say for us, it was the enhanced case management. That wasn't the financial one. We didn't always have to throw money at that in order to improve things, but the level of case management that it required for our clients. Additionally, it was back rent payments. It was, the same thing, financial assistance for catching them up on utilities and bills. We did 6 hoard cleanups during our time, which were its own kind of experience and intervention. And on average, we spent about $2,400 per client. But one thing that we did is we didn't just handle back rent. We also often got creative and utilized, once clients have stopped paying rent, they've also stopped paying everything else, from medications to basic necessities in the home. And so what we would say is we're going to catch you up on your back rent and pay this month's rent, and then we're going to go ahead and pay next month's rent so that you can utilize and catch up on what those things that you're needing so that you can meet those gaps that have fallen through in this amount of time. And we found that although that was maybe 3 months worth of payments, it offered more stabilization for the client, and then they were able to get the food and just the things that they needed. Because as you know, our seniors will go without eating in order to feed their own animals and to make their rent. That's just kind of who they are. They'll go without their medications. So, so about $2,400 back rent, future rent, and hoard cleanups.
Got it. How about LA?
Yeah, for LA, without a doubt, the most common intervention has been rent payments. But that's been followed by enhanced case management, rent back payments, and then after that, it's linkages to housing, contacts with landlords, storage fees, landlord incentives, and application fees. And for us, the average financial assistance amount is about $5,800, mostly for back rent and rent payments.
I don't think I have Riverside down for this one. Would you have anything to add from Riverside on this?
Grace, are you going to take that, or do you want me to take it? Juliet, I would agree with what everybody has said up to this point. I don't know what the figure is per client. I would say it's closer to what David is describing in LA County. The one thing that I would add, because we also deal with a lot of literally homelessness people who are literally homeless, that a lot of motel vouchers are used, especially prior to PRK, picking up so many of those folks. So all the other things that people have said, and motel vouchers as well. Grace, if you have a number off the top of your head, go ahead, but I think it's closer to what David was saying.
It is closer. It varies, right? We're paying for mostly the motel vouchers and then for first month's rent, and we also pay for any kind of moving costs that are associated with it. Because sometimes a lot of the clients have things in storage or have things scattered around. So we try to make sure that their experience is pretty fluid and that there's not any kind of barriers for them to getting into either the motels or their first permanent home.
Yeah. Thanks. I didn't mean to put you guys on the spot. I just did recall in a conversation that we had where Barry were talking about some of these costs can be really, really high, right? Some of these costs and really like some of the challenges in trying to navigate and make sure your fiscal department is set up and ready for some of these requests that are going to be coming their way to release some funds for these clients, because it hasn't been the norm in APS in the past, right?
Yeah, Juliet, absolutely. We were not at all prepared for the outflow of money from our very small APS program at the time. You know, we just never used money like that. We never had money to spend. So we had to build the mechanisms to do it. And then when you're paying $2,000-$3,000 at a time, normally that goes up to AD level approval. But if it's happening every single day, you can't take it up to the AD every single day. So you have to build a mechanism that's able to keep up with the needs of the community. And so it was a bit of a challenge as well.
Yeah. Thanks for that. I appreciate you adding in that piece. Okay. I think it goes without saying that COVID has impacted everything that we've been trying to do. I did hear you guys saying earlier that a lot of the ideas about room sharing or sharing of housing, COVID might have been a big impediment to doing any of that, and maybe still continues to be. But I'm going to ask Humboldt first to take on this question. How has COVID impacted HomeSafe implementation and the services your county has been able to provide?
You know, at times we've had less in-person responses due to social distancing, and so we were less likely to become aware of hazardous conditions in the home if it wasn't part of the initial report. So that was one thing. Another thing is it was really difficult to find in-home supportive services and other care agency care providers. And because a lot of those care providers are busy taking care of their own family members. And so we really had to think out of the box to make sure that our clients that needed the help that they were getting before could continue to have care providers coming in. And so we, you know, a lot of the safety nets, like going to adult day health, they closed down. PACE. So a lot of our clients were suddenly much more isolated, more vulnerable, and also there was an upswing in financial abuses. So a lot of our clients were being exploited financially. And then there was some of our clients chose not to get vaccinated, and they got pretty sick. And others lost spouses or family members during this time. So as I said earlier, some of our clients are experiencing ongoing grief. So those are the main things that I would say COVID impacted.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for that, Leora. How about LA?
Yeah, so it definitely deeply impacted our program. One of the major ways it affected it was because of the eviction moratorium. So, of course, that was a good thing. It prevented people from, being evicted. But in the end, it prevented us from having more referrals to our own program, the Home Safe program. So it was kind of a double-edged sword. We're glad that a lot more people were prevented from being evicted during that time. But then it just like the previous speaker, for us, it severely decreased the ability for us to contact our clients. Our homeless services authority simply couldn't go out and do the visits that they would normally do. And then sort of on another level, a lot of our service provider staff were simply required to take more time off due to themselves testing positive for COVID-19. So it was definitely a widespread and deep impact for us.
Yeah, definitely. I can imagine. Fresno, anything to add on this one?
I think they pretty much cover. I mean, the moratorium definitely impacted the housing stock, and it hindered and it lengthened the time that we had to transition clients into other units. And the clients being hesitant to meet in person because of the fear of contracting COVID. Services within Western, we never really closed our office. We continued to provide services. However, we did take some safety measures. Whereas before we would be able to, let's say if a client was going to go to the DMV or they had to go to social services, we were able to transport them. And sometimes it would take at least 2 clients per vehicle. With the COVID, now we're only able to take 1 client at a time. So it kind of has also hindered and it slowed the services a little bit. They never really stopped, but it kind of did impacted on how fast we're able to transport them. And transportation has been a big issue. Again, with the fear of clients not wanting to utilize the public system because they're going to contract COVID or not wanting to go out. And if we're going to be providing the transportation, our program only had 2 case managers, and at some point I only had 1. So it really limited us to the, how many clients we were able to transport to obtain specific services. And so that really kind of hindered and the client's progress a little bit.
Are folks seeing, the follow-up question that are folks seeing, I mean, certainly COVID is still with us today, but are folks seeing a little bit of relief here and a little bit more ability to have folks go out and manage those transportation issues, since actually starting to turn the bend on those?
I think as more people are being vaccinated, they're perhaps a little bit more open to, start going out and start connecting with our case managers. They definitely been able to do more home visits than before. We really try to keep our clients educated, and whenever there's any resources available, we let them know. As far as like there was a lot of pop-up clinics for them to be able to go get their vaccines. We were able to provide that transportation for those that needed it so that they can go get that service. So I think that right now things are slowly getting back to the regular rhythm pre-COVID, as far as what we're seeing with our clients.
Thanks for that, Maria. So next question, and this question is LA, I believe, is going to tackle this question. Can you talk a little bit to us about how racial equity and cultural competency are factored into the delivery of your home safe services?
Yeah, certainly. For one thing, our service providers were required to employ the staff that were fluent in the dominant language of the community, or at least have access to an interpreter to help out. The service providers were required to deliver services that were culturally and linguistically appropriate. And we're trying to drill down a little bit moving into the next phase and really just really delve into using the data that's available to us, census data, poverty data, to really determine what kind of an allocation we need to use per service planning area. Because that's something that we really only touched upon in the pilot, and we really want to use that a lot more to the advantage of the community moving forward.
And if I could just add, this is Veronica with Los Angeles County.
based on the data that was provided, we were informed that apparently there were not enough African American receiving services. The population was not receiving as many services, I guess, as a comparison to the other populations. So one of the things that we will also be looking at is that particular situation so that we can rectify that. But like David was saying, we opened that to all areas, the entire county. So we're not really sure how that came about, but we're going to look into that further.
Yeah, it's just obviously staying on top of your data and just finding ways to determine why those things are happening and ways that you can possibly mediate those issues. Always ongoing challenges for all counties and or in all social services programs. So kudos to you guys for working to stay on top of that. Our next formal question, and this will be the last of our formal questions, and we'll be able to turn to some of the questions from that have been asked from folks who are here today. But before we do that, our last question is, what types of outreach has your county used to inform the community of the Home Safe program? I heard Placer talk about putting stuff in the paper, but I'd like to hear from a couple other counties about some of the things they've done to outreach to the community about the Home Safe program. Fresno, could you talk a little bit about what you guys have done?
Yes, so at the implementation of our APS or Home Safe program, we created, or the county created like a quick fact sheet that we were able to utilize when we went out to do the presentations for the, at the coordinated entry case conferencing meetings, which I mentioned earlier, more than 35 providers attend these meetings. So it really allowed us to provide that, distribute that flyer to all of them and really let them know about the program, that it was a new program, the implementation, the case managers, contact information. It really allowed us to make the community aware of this new program and how they can submit referrals to the APS program.
Great.
Now, if I can add to that, just to caution those counties who will be starting up. So as soon as that happened, we started to get clients to walk in the building and say, I want to sign up for the Home Safe program, who were not and wanted vouchers. They were looking for vouchers for motel. So be careful in your marketing in that we actually had to turn people away because they didn't meet the criteria of being either a dependent adult or an adult who experienced abuse or maltreatment. So be mindful of that.
Clarity of communication, right, Michael? All right.
Exactly.
Yeah, good to know. Humboldt, can you talk a little bit about what outreach you guys have done?
Yeah, it was similar for us. We created a flyer that we would provide when people had questions, and we also reached out to a lot of community organizations and within our own agency to local tribes, and just tried to educate everyone about what was available to them. And yeah, really reiterating that, you know, it starts with an APS referral. We did have other agencies, even within our own county, wanting us to basically just open up an APS case so that we could provide home safe services. But going forward, you know, the program regulations have changed slightly and relaxed a little bit around that. So it's sounding like counties are having the option to offer home safe to potential APS clients, not just current APS clients. So you know, we'll have to talk about what we have the capacity for. But yeah, I think we're pretty similar to the other counties with how we did our outreach.
Yeah, it's certainly great to have the ability to serve more, the capacity that does obviously become an issue, the ability to serve more. So thanks for sharing that, Danielle. Elliot, could you speak a little bit to what you've done for outreach on the program?
Sure. So we've certainly done a lot of presentations. Maritza's gone out and done a lot of in-person presentations. We've also done our share of virtual presentations using Teams and Zoom platforms with our partner organizations, and anyone that could potentially refer clients to us. And certainly we're very well aware of the criteria issues. And so the way we've addressed that is that we really have encouraged our partner organizations to make the reverse referrals that Juan Carlos Martinez was speaking about earlier. So anyone that could potentially be an APS client that isn't one already, of course, they need to be an APS client in order to qualify for Home Safe. That way, perhaps we could accept them as an APS client along with being a Home Safe client. We've also done a social media campaign. We put together a whole toolkit. We've posted on our webpage, our partners' web pages. We've even done Instagram. And it's really just the beginning. We're hoping to look into new ways to reach out to the community moving forward.
Great. And incorporating social media and incorporating virtual meetings and such. Great ideas. Great suggestions from the panel for other folks who are now jumping into the fold with their current with Home Safe. Some ideas from folks who've done it. So we have we have a lot of questions from folks. Actually, we may not get to all of them, but we thought we would pick a few of the questions that have been posed in chat thus far, since we have a few more minutes that we can pose to the panel to get some further insights. So I know Erin and Stuart have been monitoring the chat. Erin, do you have a question that you can pose to the panel?
Yeah. So the first question was, for the panel, how are you preparing your staff and the APS program to address the upcoming age drop in January? Have you identified any unique needs or barriers that this 60 to 64 population may have?
So anybody from the panel, if they'd like to jump in and talk about how they've been preparing their staff for the upcoming age drop.
This is Leora from Humboldt. We're working on getting, we're asking for 3 more social worker 4s and 1 social worker 1, so that we can work with so we'd have enough staff. We've had a lot of staff out of the office, and we've seen how that impacts our ability to really do the case management that we're being required to do right now. So that's the first thing that we're doing. We're doing some training on we're doing a UC Davis training on housing and behavioral health issues to better prepare us to be able to work with some of those adults who are sort of chronically homeless and need to be housed because of for health reasons. And our staff is getting ready, for this. And I think that some of we've kind of worked out that some of our clients that are 60 up to 65, sometimes they would be considered dependent adults anyway, and if they're not thriving, as before the age goes down, they're not going to be thriving. So we're expecting quite a lot more cases. And we're just trying to prepare ourselves for that. We've also, as I said before, we got that hoarding coordinator. We're trying to get a nurse. We're trying to hire a nurse to come out and see our clients in their homes so that they don't have to go out and see doctors. So that's what we're doing so far.
Great, thanks, Leora. Anyone else?
Yeah, this is Shannon Lemons, Glasser. I would say that we have another MDT that we attend, and it's with our Protect partners, which is our law enforcement and our other agencies that are more of the law enforcement, probation, things like that. And what we're running into is trying to speak with them a lot about and seeing prosecuting a crime. So this is one area we're identifying. 60 to 65 is not elder abuse, according to that age. So that's one thing that we're trying to speak up to and just try to figure out and educate our law enforcement that we will be utilizing those services when it comes to some of our protective issues, and how will that be supported on the other side of things without the law enforcement codes catching up to the APS.
Shannon, you may want to let your law enforcement friends know that the penal code is being revised to reflect that age is being lowered to 60. And because of the changes in WIC code. So the penal code will follow those changes. So just because it hasn't happened, it's coming.
Good news. Good news. Thank you, Michael.
And in Los Angeles, I mean, beyond, we of course have to update our all of our outreach materials to reflect these changes. Beyond that, it's also going to affect the demographics, and as we were talking about earlier, the cultural competency, and how the data is going to impact how we provide these services to our clients. So we're working closely with our Homeless Services Authority to see how that's going to affect that and what kinds of services we're going to provide, and how they're going to change accordingly.
I think also with Riverside County, with the age dropping to 60, it presents the unique problem of they are not eligible to Social Security. So, and then also they might not be appropriate for SSI at times. So I think we're looking at who would qualify for maybe HDAP and seeing if there could be a connection between those clients and other funds. And also we're working with our housing authority for mainstream vouchers due to the fact that with the HCV in Riverside County, they are now just targeting 65 and older, but we're trying to incorporate those mainstream vouchers so that we can include dependent adults and people under 65 to give alternatives for permanent housing. I also think with the PHS housing is really important with people that are in that age group that have some mental health issues, that we could house them through PSH and other supportive housing that's available through different organizations.
So really thinking about creative options of other programs and other things.
And of course, the staff.
Yeah.
We need the staff, because this is looking at, if we're projecting it, it's going to add, probably 1,000 more people to our caseloads. So as it is, we're really up top of the caseloads with the homeless clientele, that we really need to rethink of how many social workers it would actually take to be able to service the different age group.
Yeah. Well, hopefully counties are able to, with the expanded funding for APS, are going to be able to do just that and add more staff to their roles to provide for this new influx of clients. Stuart, did you have another question to pose to the panel?
Yeah. So Rachel from Orange County asked, has anyone utilized any Medi-Cal funded services to assist clients with long-term care to mitigate the risk of homelessness and safety, such as home and community-based alternatives waiver or assisted living waiver?
This is Michael with Fresno. We have had, we would not have them go through Home Safe if we're going to go with an assisted living waiver. So we've had a few that really were not appropriate. Their level of care was too high for Home Safe, so we did work with them and family members in the hospital, actually, in one case, to get them into an assisted living living waiver bed. But yeah, if those that are higher need, we wouldn't refer over.
In Riverside, we also use in-home supportive services. We evaluate the APS workers, also evaluate each client if they would be eligible for in-home supportive services. So it is a great thing that we're all housed in the same regions within home supportive services. So we are able to communicate with the other social workers. We also use the assisted living waiver, and we have contact with the Medi-Cal workers so that we can expedite some of the assisted living waivers, or we also utilize board and care and do have a contract with a board and care facility if additional services are needed for that.
This is Shannon from Placer. We have utilized a lot of the assisted living waiver for our program, and similarly, the same situation. We have a relationship with Medi-Cal, and a lot of our assisted living waivers actually came out of Project Room Key as a reverse referral, because just discovering that maybe they weren't appropriate there, they had a higher level of care, or they were just at risk. So we would get IHSS in place, get a worker in place to help support them, and while we were waiting on that prioritization for ALW. Thank you.
Segues into the next question. Stuart, do you want to follow that question up with the next one? Is that board and care?
Yeah. So also, I'm just going to note, it sounds like you all have created a great continuum of care approach, fitting HomeSafe into that continuum of care, not as a standalone program. So for APS clients who may have secured housing through room and board and care, on average, how long did you fund those stays? Were there any lessons learned with securing housing for clients and board and cares that are unlicensed, or did you avoid unlicensed placements?
For Fresno, we've utilized the room and boards, and the length of time varies. Like I mentioned earlier, some of the clients have chosen to stay there because they felt those connections with the other residents from the house, so they opted for it to be more of a permanent solution for them. However, we've paid more like the deposit, and depending on the client's income, we might have done anywhere from 1 to 3 months as far as assistance. There was one particular one, I believe we did a little bit more, and that was more like 6 months before we were able to transition them into their permanent unit.
Yeah, in LA, we actually have contracts with a couple of temporary housing shelters, and so we've on average I believe it's been a couple of months that we've been able to house them. Juan Carlos, is that about right?
Yes, a couple of months, just enough to allow the case workers to find more permanent, stable housing.
Yeah.
Thank you. So the next question, did any panelists use HomeSafe funds to support the housing needs of repatriates? And if so, any lessons learned?
Has that been a situation for any of the counties yet that you're aware of?
So, Juliet, there was one time that we had somebody come in from the Philippines, and we did have to use HomeSafe monies to help house that person. The whole thing was a very awkward situation. We're not even sure that APS is the right organization for that, but the feds had dropped that person off in our desert and said, well, somebody's got to do something. So we did, but I would not say that it's been a regular approach with us. So it was a one-time occurrence, and since the inception that Riverside received HomeSafe monies, we did use that for short-term housing for that person.
We didn't even know that you can use HomeSafe monies for a repatriate program.
This person was an elder, and so that's how we did it, right? It wasn't the repatriation. It was a homeless elder, except, all the other stuff that came with it.
Yeah. So it doesn't sound like it's going to happen too often, but something to consider, something to be thinking about. Aaron, do you have another follow-up?
Yeah, so the next question, for counties where housing inventory has been low, have you had to work with other counties to find affordable placement, and how did this impact the APS investigation?
This is Michael with Fresno. No, we don't cross county lines, so we work within our county. We did struggle with people who were out in the rural areas or the more mountainous areas who did not want to come into Fresno, the city, to be placed in often a room and board, and on occasion a board and care. And it really was, again, it was ultimately their decision. If they chose not to, then there really, again, wasn't anything we could do other than try to make the situation as safe as possible. I do know that West Care worked with one family up in the foothills for quite a while, to try to provide supports and make sure that the home environment was safe, hoping that they would eventually change their mind.
No.
Decide to move into the valley, but I don't believe that ever occurred.
And yeah, in Los Angeles, it was pretty much the same. We worked within our county boundaries. I don't know that we even would have been authorized through the terms of the agreement to be able to do something like that. We certainly would have run it by the state first.
Yeah.
This is Shannon from Placer, and we did a lot of cross-county placement, just being so rural in Nevada County and some other counties around us. And the ALW program is only in Sacramento. So we even helped families take flights back to other states and relocate where it was more affordable if it was in the Midwest with different family members or guidance and support over that. So we were actually beneficial that way, as our funding stream was one of the only ones that could cross boundary lines, at least from how we interpreted it. So we were able to meet those gaps that maybe some of the other programs couldn't meet. Like we would fill that gap in for them.
Yeah, interesting. Different approaches based on different geographical needs, right? Too, as well. Being very rural like that, as opposed to being very being a very large city county like I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but like Los Angeles. Interesting. Any of the other counties?
Riverside County, I think, borders, 4 other counties. So we do pay for the motels, but if they find other housing because they have family or resources in another county, they can transfer their Section 8 vouchers to other counties. But when that happens, we have to close the case, but we do call the APS from that county and report in a case to see if they want to look at it. But usually we can't stop people from moving county to county. And if there is no housing available there and they have a network somewhere else, that's completely fine. We just can't keep the case open.
Yeah, and this is Danielle in Humboldt. I would say that's something that we've always done, not just for home safe clients, but for anybody. If there's a better option for them somewhere else, then of course we're going to try to support that. We have a lot of people who end up stranded in our county. They come here with grand ambitions. They're drawn by the marijuana industry or the idea that this is some sort of like hippie mecca or whatever draws them here. They end up getting stuck and coming to social services for rescue.
Okay, next question. Some of the panelists had mentioned relationships with boarding care homes. Are they paying for rooms as they become available in boarding cares, or do they have arrangements with boarding cares to have rooms set aside for home safe?
So I can take that from Riverside. So that's both new and old frontier for us. So there are room and board and care operators in Riverside County. Most of them are good operators, right? And so the ones that are good operators, there's always a supply of vendor who's not yet ready for a sniff but probably does need room and board or board and care assistance. And we work with the local ones to, have people go into those facilities or homes. More recently, we have just started looking at contracts with the idea that, say, a room and board operator would always have 1 or 2 beds available for APS. So maybe there'd be 2 APS clients there, but if they left and went into, permanent housing via housing choice voucher or something, those 2 beds would become available to us again, so that the elder dependent adult can go into those. What we have found is that our elders and dependent adults absolutely will not use the county shelter, the county contracted shelter. It's just not a place for these more feeble folks to be hanging around with those young toughs. And so they won't go. So we've been starting to utilize more formally the board and care system and the room and board system. But I would say be cautious as you do that, because there are some bad operators out there, and you certainly don't want to be paying a bad operator to do an abuse against your client, right? That does not read well. So you have to be very selective in how you do this, and if you're going to do a formal contract, you got to go through the whole process and all that kind of stuff. So it's both new and old frontier for us as we try to move forward.
That was a huge challenge, if I could just add, for Los Angeles County. One of the biggest challenges that I don't think was discussed earlier is that a lot of the temporary housing solutions that our contractor offered and subcontractors offered were those facilities where our APS clients were not suitable for staying there. A lot of our folks, as someone mentioned, are feeble. They're not able to perform their own activities of daily living, and most of these shelters require folks to be very independent. So that was a huge, huge challenge for us initially. And I think that's something that moving forward, especially those new counties that are entering into home safe contracts, need to be very well aware of, that in general, the system is really not set up for the older adult population. It's really more centered towards families.
Thank you. Next question, what type of pre-home safe activities and trainings did counties provide to Adult Protective Services social workers to prepare for home safe?
This is Michael in Fresno. Not enough, to be quite honest, because we did have some issues with takeoff. So I would recommend new counties that you really do develop some type of orientation or training for staff. We did invite the case managers from West Care to go out in the field with our workers to see what it was like and to get an idea about our population and some of the challenge with the population. I would say that was a very good thing. It was very eye-opening for them. But on our side there, I'm going to be honest, there was some confusion with staff about at what point did the worker transfer the case over to home safe and what were APS staff's duties versus West Care or home safe case manager duties.
This is Leora. So we didn't do any training, but what we have done during this period is we have spoken to other counties that were interested in home safe, and we've told them what worked for us and what didn't. So we passed on some of the things that we learned, and that was a good thing for us to do. And if people have questions, people are welcome to contact me and we can arrange a meeting and, just talk about our experiences. And, we are a rural county. a big area but a small county. So we're willing to talk to other people about that. And because we're an integrated county, there wasn't that question about when to close the case. It wasn't really so much of an issue for us. Once we'd done our job, we closed our case, which was good that we had that.
I can speak to the. Are they wanting to know what type of training we did before we actually implemented the Home Safe program?
Yeah, I believe so. They had said
preparation.
I believe so.
Okay, yeah. So we met with another housing agency, another local housing agency, to kind of learn about their services and their clientele, and it was kind of a joint training where they were also learning about Home Safe and our clientele and how can we work together on getting these referrals out. They mostly work with people who are literally homeless, and we knew that Home Safe was more of a prevention-focused program, so we were wanting to partner with somebody who we could refer folks to if it didn't seem like a good fit for Home Safe. And then also CDSS provides a lot of trainings throughout the year. They provided a lot ahead of implementation, and then they continue to offer various trainings that they encourage all Home Safe counties to participate in. And so I, always try to make sure that the staff is aware of those and encouraged to attend. I will say some of them were great and some of them were pretty awful. So, my advice is if you're going to do a training for a bunch of social workers who are super busy, really make it concise and engaging and relevant to them, because there's nothing worse than having an entire room of people just disappear on you when you're trying to do a training, which happened to me. So yeah, we did that, and then I also made a lot of worker tools that they could use and refer to while they were working their cases and documenting things, checklists, and things like that. And then now when new staff come in, I have a folder with a whole bunch of stuff inside of it, and I will sit down with them one-on-one and kind of explain Home Safe to them and show them these different tools. And there was one other thing I was going to mention. Oh, I also tell people when you are closing out your Home Safe case and trying to check all the boxes and make sure you have all the documentation, the first couple times, please feel free to tap me on the shoulder and I can even come sit next to you or screen share, because the documentation is so complicated. I really think it helps to have one-on-one support when you're learning that.
And that's all really great. Those are all really great things that you guys have learned through piloting the program. I think one of the things we've heard in some of the topics that folks want to hear more about is really how we can best prepare the workforce for the Home Safe program and kinds of tools and trainings and assistance and guidance that can be provided. It might be one of those things you might want to do a deeper dive on and have some discussion about what counties have done to tackle that, not only with the trainings that have been provided, but what you've done in-house. That might be something we want to think about doing a deeper dive on. We have probably time for we have probably 5 or 6 or 7 more questions to ask, but I think we have time for just a couple more before we wrap today. So I'm going to turn it back over to Erin Stewart to ask a few final questions before we move on to wrapping today's session.
One of the things that is in the questions is how are the panelist counties managing the 6 and 12-month follow-up requirements? Something seems like counties want to know.
This is Michael in Fresno. So our vendor is actually tracking that. So they're keeping up and maintaining the contact with client. The cases are usually remaining open for about 6 months, at least the vast majority. And so I think we're just now coming up on the 12-month mark for many of those earlier clients.
And if I can add to that, so something that we're doing is we are cross-referencing our HMIS system, or Homeless Management Information System, to see if any of the clients that we've exited have again recidivated and are back into the homeless system. We also look at our community by name list, which essentially is the homeless registry, to see if the clients have been added again as active and they're back again needing services. So we've had a couple of the clients that have reached their 12-month post-exit, and so far we haven't had any recidivism, at least not that we've seen or identified.
Yeah, and in LA County, that part of it is also left to our subcontractors, the service providers. They do all the follow-up.
In Placer County, we let them know at the intake that we're going to be following up with 6 and 12 months. And then we just trigger a calendar. And then if we can't find the answer in either HMIS or PanoSoft, we just cold call and just check in with them. Sometimes that's opened up the door for people to want more services after we had something stabilized. And other times it's just really nice to touch base with them and hear how successful they're being. So.
With Riverside County, we've been keeping the cases open about 12 months because it does take a few months to house them. And then we provide follow-up services to make sure that they're stabilized in their home, that they're paying rent, that they have some type of budget in place, and that they're able to manage their bills and any kind of issues that come up. So we keep them open for 12 months. We're seeing them monthly.
Thank you.
Lots of different approaches. So you have one more question to ask, Erin?
So the final question we have time for is, how does the HomeSafe program function after hours and on weekends?
So how we do it in Riverside County, our standby callback, APS workers have access to vouchers for motels if they are homeless on the street and at risk. They have some communication with hotels already that are our county vendors, that they are familiar with us and that they can provide a voucher or get it at the first business day, and they're able to place the client or the senior into a motel.
We do the very same thing here at Fresno, and if necessary, we'll issue also like a gift card for food. Typically it's used, again, it's a weekend more often than not, and get them stabilized in some housing until we can do a full assessment investigation the next business day.
It's the same for us in LA. It's really the next business day if it isn't an immediate and urgent APS need.
Thanks for that, panelists, and thanks for just an exceptional panel today. You guys have done just a terrific job and fielding a lot of questions off the cuff just right now, as well as the prepared questions we had. And I really hope that this has been beneficial for everyone today to hear an overview of some of the major topics surrounding HomeSafe implementation that these counties have grappled with and learned from. Some key things I heard: communication, teaming, collaborating, being flexible, thinking outside the box. But lots more to come. But are there any, before we move on to the last thing we're going to do today, which is talk about next steps, are there any last thoughts that our panelists would like to impart? Any words of wisdom that they feel like we haven't touched upon? Feel free to jump in right here if you have anything to add.
Well, these are not words of wisdom, but this is Los Angeles County, and I just want to implore upon everyone, especially those new counties that are going to be proceeding with the HomeSafe program. I cannot stress enough to get started on the process and start developing your implementation plan and working on those contracts and advising your board of supervisors if necessary on accepting the money that has been allocated to you, because a lot of that bureaucracy, as we know, sometimes really impacts negatively on implementation and getting started on trying to utilize those funds. And so I would suggest that, you get started quickly. And then, of course, the second thing is to really engage with your partners. There's so many stakeholders that are probably going to be involved, including your housing person in your county, your housing agency, I should say, because those discussions are really important. And they're so well versed on homeless issues and the homeless population. They have so much different jargon than we're normally used to speaking, and we're not used to their vocabulary. And so that's a training in and of itself. And so I would also suggest that you quickly engage with all of them and develop those partnerships, because you really are going to rely on each other to make it a successful program in your county. And so that's the other piece of advice that I would give everybody.
From Riverside County, know your data. You will be asked at any time by anyone. And that, I think, was one of my biggest lessons learned, is to know my data.
Thanks for that, Grace.
Shannon from Placer. I would suggest outreaching to your civil sheriff's department or whoever your law enforcement is that actually serves the eviction notice. Doing an early intervention with them, preventing when they were being notified before the eviction went through, allowed us to really do much more preventative work and less work on the rehousing aspects.
Great idea. Thanks, Shannon.
And I would say,
can I add one thing? Just don't work in silos. In the homeless world is so hard. You'll get run over so fast if you try to work in silos. You have to build partnerships, because you are a very tiny speck of sand on a very big beach. And it is very, very tough to work in this field by yourself.
Thanks for that, Barry. Leora?
I would say start out slow. Don't open up too many cases in the beginning. Just do a few really well and get all the staff involved so that they learn how to do the process, so that you're not overwhelmed and failing the clients.
And also be prepared to improvise and be flexible. It's always a work in progress, and you never know what's going to come your way. So, we're still learning, and we're still hoping to learn a lot more as we move into the next phase.
And Julie, I would say for those that are providing services to people that are already experiencing homelessness, is to really learn the definitions that HUD uses or the COC uses to ensure that the clients are meeting that criteria for those services, because there's a lot of confusion sometimes when it comes to the definitions of homelessness. And like everybody else said, those partnerships are definitely what makes a difference in us being able to be successful and be able to provide more-rounded services to our clients.
Thank you guys all for all of those nuggets. I got to say, it really speaks to really just the power that goes in of counties and what they're able to do. I think you guys have done such innovative work and have muddled through this and really had some great successes and are learning still. You're learning all the time, but really the work goes on in the counties, and you guys are doing a lot of great work. And so my congratulations to all of you. This is exciting for everybody else who's coming into the fold. And CFPIC, we continue to be here to provide any support that we can in terms of bringing these voices together, to helping to share these ideas and share perspectives and share tools, so that everyone can be as successful as possible in serving these clients. So to that end, we are planning some deeper dive sessions. Those are yet to be determined when, but we are thinking, having one in November, having one in December, potentially having them beyond if there's a need for them and there's a space for ongoing sharing and collaboration among counties. We talked about a lot of stuff today, but some topics identified during the break today. We talked about creative housing options, training, sharing worker tools, how do you work with behavioral health, data, preparing your teams. A lot of great ideas were thrown out. There's been information collected in previous sessions as well about what things people are really interested in learning more about. So what we're going to be doing is putting together a really quick survey that encapsulates all the topics folks have brought forward that they'd like to see some deeper dives on. And we'd like to send that out to folks, and we'd like for you guys to, it'll be a survey where you put them in rank order of what you think first, second, and third you'd like to learn more about. That way, as we work to put together subsequent sessions to bring folks together, we can prioritize what things seem to be the most necessary at this moment and what things can maybe be a little bit further down the road. Not to say that we don't want to learn about all of it now, but as much as we can, we'll try to prioritize that and create the space for some more of these conversations. So we hope that this has been beneficial to folks today. I want to say thanks again to our fabulous panel who did a great job in relaying so much information in a short period of time. And keep a lookout. We'll be sending out that survey as well as then follow up registration flyers for some deep dive sessions that folks might want to participate in and learn more about HomeSafe. And good luck to you all, and get your board letters going. Like they said, get those started early so you can get your HomeSafe funding, and take care and stay safe.